Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Drukhari content on 6++. Tom, very lowest of men here, back once again with some mischievous, malevolent Dark Eldar content for you all. This is a bit of a conceptual video. It is a overall impressions, reactions, and opinions of the Drukhari Codex sort of video from myself. Okay, we're making loads of Drukhari content on 6++ right now. We're reviewing the detachments. We've made a tier list for the units. We're going to have battle reports coming. This is an army that is very near and dear to the hearts of a lot of our Archons. Ben, Adam, myself, Rob, loads of people in our team play Drukhari inside out. We have quite a lot of opinions on this book. Some of them positive, some of them negative, many of them in between. And what I wanted to do today was share my kind of conceptual feelings about New Drukhari, where I think the book sits, what I think its strengths and its weaknesses and its limitations are. Because this is going to pop up in other videos. It's occasionally going to be alluded to. I'm going to be occasionally mentioning certain things. And what I don't want is for educational content that's aimed at getting the best out of the army and having fun with the army, which is what I'm most interested in making. I don't want that being held down or overshadowed by any negativity. So what I want to do today is a very earnest appraisal of the book, what I think its positives and negatives are, the good, the bad, and the ugly, what I think about it personally. And what I'd actually love is to have a sort of dialogue with you, the Drukhari community out there in the world as well. I want to know what you think of the Codex. I'd love to know how you're getting on with it, and I'd love to know, especially for newer players, how you're finding it and what you think of it as well, because it's quite possible that I come into this with baggage from previous editions, for example, which I think is quite an interesting thing to consider and unpack. So I'm really looking forward to hearing what you guys think. Please do let us know in the comments. And let us know what other Drukhari-focused content you'd like to see as well, because we're making loads at the moment. Thanks so much for supporting 6++. Please do hit like and subscribe, leave a comment, all that good stuff. You can sign up as a YouTube member to support us financially that way. And if you'd like, you can come and get some Drukhari coaching with me as well. I'd be happy to take you on. So let's get into the main meat of the video. We'll start with the good, and there is a lot of good in this book. Okay, this Drukhari Codex is very techy and very skill expressive. It has a lot of lovely combination plays. It has lots of tricks and tools to set up. You now have almost every conceivable kind of tool and trick in the current 10th edition rule set available. They may be spread out across detachments. You may not be able to access them all at once. But you've got a very flexible and very powerful rule set where lots of different units can do lots of different things. Special shout outs to the free stratagem on the Archon. Absolutely awesome to have that now. Or the CP regen from the Succubus. It's just little tricks like that. It's really nice to see them brought in. And I think crucially, almost every unit in the book has a role. There are only a handful of duds, right? So we'll come back to that. But I think the book itself, in that sense, gives you loads of tools to work with, lots of things with which to play the game. And for that, it should be applauded. I really like, in number 2, the new pain token system. Okay, you generate pain tokens in your command phase now, as well as getting other ones through killing and battle shock failure. Now, rather than purely unlocking an offensive boost in rerolls and AP, pain tokens get you different abilities depending on the unit that you target them on. And when they trigger is a lot more flexible. There's a lot less start of phase activation for pain tokens now. So I think it's a more permissive system now. It rewards clever resource management. You can cascade pain tokens through a phase using one, killing a thing, getting another, and keep pain tokens running in that way, in a way that you couldn't do before. So it rewards careful resource management. Crucially, because you generate one in each command phase, the run dry scenario is no longer a threat. In certain matchups against big things that you couldn't kill easily, for example, it was very possible to run out of pain tokens and then be struggling to generate any. Which was a massive loss condition, I remember, especially for Sky Splinter in the early days when we were playing that. So I think the new pain token system is far better. It is much more interesting, much more flexible, very fun to track and sort of apply in games. And I love the different ways in which individual units now sing with a pain token buff. Okay, not every single pain token rule is a hit. Some of them are a bit hit and miss, but the ones that we have that are really good and really applicable are excellent. There are loads of datasheet glow-ups in this book as well, okay? I think a whole bunch of units which I love are far better. I'm looking at the Witch Cults especially, right? Reavers are incredible now, 24-inch move, slightly better melee, really nice. Witches, phenomenal. They actually have good melee weapons now, so they're actually genuinely a threat. They have the built-in speed, which is fantastic. And Hellions as well, and the Succubus, all basically much faster, harder hitting, much more relevant in game now. Deep Strike on the Hellions is a phenomenal change. They become probably one of our best and most credible rapid ingress threats. So I think it's important to stress I love a lot of the changes. I think the datasheet improvements to the Archon are some of my absolute favourites. Free strat, damage 3, dev wounds weapon, the soul trap is really cool and thematic. And I'm very excited to build and paint my new Archon as well. And of course, Lady Malice is an excellent model, marrying some really cool rules together with the redeploy, the Vectora, and the little feel no pain on her. I massively enjoy a lot of these different units, and I think that someone definitely took a lot of care in improving a lot of the data sheets, especially on the sort of Cabal and Witch Cult side, where there really don't seem to be many misses whatsoever. So, continuing on the theme of what's good, we have multiple detachments here that are playable with markedly different styles and strengths. My absolute favourite is Spectacle of Spite because I like combat and I like witches, and I think those are really, really cool, and I think that detachment is quite unique, quite interesting, and a lot of fun to play. I think that Reaper's Wager remains very good. I think the Real Space Raiders has had subtle upgrades and changes, which actually make for quite interesting interplays with things like the Coven, with -1 damage, and double fire and fading Cabalites. I think there's quite a lot of interesting material there to work with. The Coven detachment, I think, is underexplored and actually has some really fun tricks with the resurrecting a homunculus, and the general -1 to wound on Coven there, I think, is definitely very nice. So I think you've got several different detachments there that work well. I think Cabalite Cartel has exceptional damage and some fun and quite unique tricks in the lone ops for Ravagers, things like that. I think you can do some interesting things with that detachment, and the damage spikes there are really fun to play with the first couple of times you use them. Sky Splinter also loves all the new units as well. So in short, we have a bunch of different ways to play here, and you can go in different directions depending on what it is you want to do. Crucially, whilst doing that, what I like about the book is that many of our key units sort of plug in and function no matter what detachment they are in. Okay, this could very easily not have happened. I was very worried you'd have a book where the Witch Cults, the Cabals, and the Covens felt bounded off and like they didn't work in each other's detachments, because that would have sucked, let's be honest. Drukhari are always supposed to have those interplays. Because of the way pain tokens work, because so much of the power of what makes units work is unlocked via their pain token rules, you can use them in any detachment, and I think that's excellent. It means Hellions plug in anywhere really nicely. The Ravager plugs in anywhere really nicely. Scourge work in any detachment. Witches and Cabalites, Archons, they can all go and play no matter which detachment you use, and I think that is excellent. Actually, really a triumph of design, and I think that's exactly where the new pain token rules have been very carefully thought out to ensure that you have interplay and cross-exchange across detachments. And my final point for the good as well, the army has just a complete mission play toolkit. You are a primary and secondary mission play dream in this army, okay? Between Reavers, Mandrakes, you have all sorts of options to play. Very, very good fundamental Warhammer, be very good at scoring and shut down your opponent's score. Mandrakes with the lone op 18, shore up a vulnerability in our backfield that we sometimes have. The return of Disintegrator Cannons as a 6.3 gun makes the Disintegrator Cannon Ravager far more relevant, far more able to actually hurt the kinds of things the Dissi Ravager is supposed to hunt. So I really, really like that. And it does feel like you've got a much more balanced set of tools across the units now for doing different things in game. With that said, let's move and think a little bit about some of the limitations and the negatives. For me, a lot of this is in a conceptual sense. Okay, after playing a bunch of the detachments in recent times, my concern is the Drukhari identity, and the identity I fell in love with, is that the army is the fastest in the game and the most fragile. Harlequins, okay, maybe have a case for competing for this spot, but broadly speaking, that is Drukhari's role, right? The quickest and the most fragile. In practice, a lot of our detachments are slower than a lot of other popular armies and builds in the game. Partly this is because Fly works differently now, but Venoms and Raiders are not as easy to get around as they used to be, okay? Which means the army is not actually as quick as it might seem. Some of our units got made slower again, like Cabalites and the Archon losing speed. A 7-inch move doesn't actually set you apart from a huge number of Space Marine armies these days. Emperor's Children, Space Wolves, World Eaters. And almost all of those armies have much more readily available access to advance and charge than we do. That's rough, right? For me, conceptually, that is rough, because Drukhari pay the price for their glass cannon aesthetic by being the most fragile army in the game. Their units fold instantaneously when hit. But Marines are just as quick, just as able to close with them, just as able to go toe-to-toe with them. that's a bit of a design issue, okay? And it feels like a bit of an overcorrection from an era in ninth edition, especially where Drukhari were hunting down marine type armies. For me, that's always been their identity. That's what they're supposed to do. They are designed to be an anti-elite killing army. But at the moment, I feel like the vast majority of our detachments feel slow compared to a lot of armies in the game, and that's not the way it should be, in my opinion. Another grievance I have is the change to leadership 7 across the board. This feels unnecessary. I'm a little bit confused at the decision to do this. Our Craftworld brothers are still leadership 6. Now you can make the case that Drukhari are cowards. Sure, I think that's true up to a point, but they pick their fights, right? That's how that's meant to be reflected. Once they're in a battle, they're not backing down or running away. And I think this actually hurts us in some matchups that used to be quite unpleasant, like Tyranids and Demons as well, where the worst leadership definitely sucks. And so I think that was an odd change to muscle in amongst the other ones being made here. I'm not fully sure that Drukhari deserved that or that was fair. Moving it along, I think there are a number of detachments that feel perhaps a little bit too cautious and undercooked. I'm looking at Coven and Kabalite Cartel. I think in both cases, one or two tools to round it out and make it a fully realized detachment feel like they're missing. Right? Coven is semi-durable, but really lacks output boosts that aren't very conditional, and so ends up a bit lopsided as a result. Right? You need to be able to make your Coven dangerous and have offensive boosts in this detachment that are reliable. Kabalite Cartel sort of has a different problem where the damage is unreal, but the actual speed, the guile, the trickery, the delivery isn't really there. Right? It's slow, it's a bit pedestrian, and it feels like it's lacking one or two tricks. To make it feel genuinely versatile and well-rounded. So a few of the detachments just don't quite get there for me and don't feel like they've been allowed the free reign to be as effective as detachments we see in other armies are. For me, broadly across the board, Coven units probably aren't quite durable or fast enough. You've got to go one way or the other, right? Either Talos and Kronos need to be quicker, because 7-inch move on a big clunky monster is a disaster, or they need to be more durable. One or the other, okay? I think they really missed their invuln from recent times. I really like the shooting glow up on the Talos. I think that's excellent. But again, their melee suffered for it. So there's just a few odd things in the treatment of the Coven. And then the Kronos feels slightly out of place in terms of it. They've sort of tried to up their output, make them a little bit more dangerous, but they haven't really managed to build them a profile that actually bothers anything. And their utility role is no longer as essential as it used to be. So I think the Coven in particular haven't quite been treated right in this. I'd have liked to see slightly different handling of the Rax and the Homunculus as well. Though I will say I think there's something in Rax that needs more exploration. They're probably a lot better at the moment than I'm giving them credit for. Broadly speaking, the army feels like it doesn't quite have enough on the board, given it pays the Overwatch tax every turn outside of Reaper's Wager, right? You are losing units every time you move because you play Drukhari and your stuff dies the second anything looks at it. I feel if it's not a normal position to be in with Drukhari, but I think one or two of our units are a bit too expensive still for how fragile they are. And we're no longer able to point things as if we can protect our key pieces in Reaper's Wager. Scourge at 130 points, when if you take Haywire Scourge in any non-Reaper detachment, they die the second you use them, is a bit of a disaster, if I'm honest. And likewise, the Shard Carbine Scourge feel too expensive. The Planes feel far too expensive to be looked at as well. I think there's a few elements here where Kabalite's going up in points as well, despite not really gaining anything of note. I think we are probably a little bit cautiously pointed here, and that makes the way the army plays a little bit awkward because you still die in droves, but you don't have the tons of models and flexibility to actually play the game with. Moving it into the ugly, there are also just some misses on datasheets, rules, points. And I want to stress, they got a lot of it right, but it means the ones they got wrong feel even more egregious. Why does the Void Raven strip cover? It's an AP4 shooting gun. It would love strip cover for itself. You're only going to get one or two activations out of it in a game, and it's applying the strip cover when it shoots. That doesn't make much sense to me. That feels very odd as a decision point. And then Hand of the Archon. I don't really know what they're trying to do with this unit at the moment. 130 points for slightly worse scouting Kabalites feels like a waste of everybody's time. No synergies with Venoms feels like a waste of time with those as well. There's something there. They could do something interesting with it, but I think the reality is they're crowbarring in a kill team. They are trying to come up with a semi-replacement for the Court of the Archon, and they don't really succeed on either front. It feels clumsily handled compared to other things. I'm not going to lose too much sleep over this because everything changes and it will come back around. but we've seen that loss of pivotal units without adequate replacement as well, right? The Beast Pack, Urian, Grotesque, the Court, you Drukhari players, you know this. We've lost a bunch of things who were integral to how the army played, right? All of those units served a phenomenal role in what they did. There is nothing quite like them in the book. And you can semi-replace them, but not massively, right? Lilith getting worse really hurts when she's now the only real fights first source in the book outside of Spectacle of Spite. It is painful, I think, in that sense. And it is one of those things where you, in certain games where you really need certain kinds of tools, you do feel their absence. And it just feels a bit easier for the opponent to get at you than it was before. And Drukhari weren't powerful before. So that's painful. And finally, this is a bit of a grievance of mine specifically, but the fragility of Drukhari vehicles is embarrassing. Okay, at this point, they used to have 5-up invuns. They desperately need them, right? They died to trivial shooting output. In a world of free grenades and grenades, like Venoms just melt to bolt pistols, I think they at least need to be able to tank the occasional long, heavy distance shot at range. And I think the 5-up coming back for those vehicles would be really, really welcome. They've suffered enough with the changes to fly. They suffer enough with the way footprints work in terrain and missions now. And I think basically they're being punished for Drukhari's perceived durability in 9th edition, but the lethality and output and strength of the things shooting at them now is just so much greater, and their toughness didn't improve. I think the 6 of invuns on those things, and indeed on the Talos and the Kronos, to be honest, is a joke. I think they could all do with the 5-up invun coming back, and that would be one of my biggest prescriptions for them, I think, in the future as well. So what happens next? I think the good news is there's loads to do here. It's a very exciting, interesting book. It doesn't have a big range now, but what you have, you can do a lot with, and there are many different hats you can wear. I think there's plenty to discover in the Codex. I think Spectacle is a lot of fun. I think Sky Splinter's worth looking at again, with Racks and Witches now brought to the fore in it. I think the Coven, Detachment, and Real Space both need a lot more exploration than they've seen so far. And of course, Reaper's Wager just is incredibly strong, and the new Drukhari, new Harlequins are worth exploring together because they are really good. So there's lots you can do. And I think it's going to be well worth getting into the army and exploring it. And if you're coming to the army now, I think there's tons to do, and at least you get to do it with the full plastic range rather than resin. So I think enjoy that, make the most of it, and we'll see how later runs of balance go for adjusting the army. I think long term, the army just desperately needs some love, some attention. It needs a large scale release and new options to freshen the range. It's had that drip feed since I started playing it in 8th edition. It has never had a serious big splash of models. I would hope that now they've dealt with Eldari, and Eldari have all those beautiful new kits, they can start thinking about and planning for Drukhari. And I think what the army really needs to take it up a level and re-establish it as a very dominant and present army is a big release with lots of interesting things, a couple of big centerpiece units, some interesting new characters and options, maybe a little bit more by way of biker characters to get around the speed issues I'm talking about would be really cool. And I'm hopeful that they'll see that in the next edition, because if not, it starts to get really hard to keep finding that passion and love for a limited range that's dwindling. I think without these, frankly, a very dedicated fan base would be very poorly served. I think Drukhari fans are incredibly passionate, incredibly artistic, really devoted to playing the army and getting the best out of it. There's a really strong player pool all around the world who love this army and want to get the most out of it. But I think unless we see some real service and attention given to them and some evidence of growth, I think people will start to worry Drukhari is sort of being left to dwindle, and I think that would be a massive shame. So there we are, guys. Thank you so much for watching. As I say, we've got loads of Drukhari content coming because I'm going to play this book. We're going to use the army in a bunch of other content as well. And we've got all sorts of exciting things coming in terms of tier lists and detachment guides and everything else. There's absolutely loads of interesting builds lurking inside this codex. And although it has its limitations here and there, I think it's a good release that has loads to keep a Drukhari player happy with in the short term. If you're interested in coming and learning more, please do hit like and subscribe. Please do leave a comment. You can sign up as a YouTube member to support us that way. If you'd like to get Drukhari coaching, don't hesitate to get in touch, and we can run that through our coaching Discord as well. I've been Lowest of Men. This has been a lot of fun to make. I'll see you all again very soon. Bye-bye.